Catching up on the road, Michael Altamura. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm good. How's my hair look? More important. It's just cut by the one and only Colin, the barber, Nathan. He done a very good job, I think.
Yeah, can you give us a bit of a...
Is that giving you like a full scope?
Yeah. Also put some cutaway shots and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I told him if he ever decides to walk away from being a trainer and the head of MTK Africa, he might have a future as a barber. So it's good to know he's got secondary skills.
Would you recommend him starting an Instagram page for all his cuts?
Yeah, I think cuts by Colin definitely could work.
Yeah.
First time he's done a line. First time he cut a line in someone's head. So I think he did a decent job. I enticed him to do it. I said to him, if you completely botch my hair, it's okay. Just shave it. So just try and take the nerves away. But other than that, yeah, everything's good. Just excited for what's ahead tonight. Looking forward to seeing how the fight unfolds.
Talking about nerves, I mean, you just mentioned it tonight. How are you feeling ahead of Mthalane against Mthalane-Edwards?
It's always nervous at this level. The good part is I'm not the one in there fighting.
Yeah.
You know, it's always nerve-wracking because there's so much on the line. With someone like Maruti, I mean, he's had a storied career, but, you know, every fight from here in, he's adding layers. He's adding chapters to what's going to be a Hall of Fame career. So we're just hopeful that, you know, 38 years of age, he's 39 in a couple of days, 21 years as a professional, but, you know, he's still been putting on terrific performances in recent years, and we want to stretch it as far as possible. So hopefully it's another vintage performance against Mthalane-Edwards, who I think is a very worthy challenger.
I know it has nothing to do with the boxing, but his Instagram following has doubled since he's arrived in England. Do you think it's important for a guy like him to get followed a bit more?
Yeah, I think to an extent. I mean, Maruti's a throwback guy. It's one of the few active fighters that when he turned professional, there was no such thing as social media. So it's been kind of a bit of an adjustment in having him understand that builds following, that builds profile, things like that. I think that the UK fans are fantastic in that if they see and get behind your story, you basically have their support for life. So, yeah, I mean, look, from Maruti's side, I mean, we'll only encourage him to do what he's comfortable with. At the end of the day, we believe that his credentials speak for themselves. And, you know, having been at the championship level for the best part of the last 14 years, you know, he don't need to go and put out, you know, 50 Instagram posts a week to earn any right or any kind of payday. I think that's already written. Or it all helps, it all stacks up, but no, I mean, everything that he accomplishes, everything he receives, is going to be predicated by what happens in the ring.
Well, Mauricio, you mentioned, he's a throwback. He's a fighter right at the end. Maybe he's got 2 or 3 more fights left to go.
Yeah.
Do you see Mthalane-Edwards being a trouble for him now?
He's got good feet. I think the movement could be problematic early, but it's a matter of just increasing the intensity, increasing the pressure. You know, one of the sayings I was taught early in my boxing journey is pressure breaks pipes. And, you know, I feel like Sonny is a terrific boxer, but if you watch a lot of his fights to date, he's been allowed to dictate the pace in his fights. So that's something that, you know, Colin, Maruti, all the team are aware of. And it's about setting the trend and creating a pressure early that the fight can't be fought at Sonny's tempo, that we place him into positions where he has to trade, where maybe he doesn't want to trade, where he has to overuse his legs. And if we do that, then, you know, even though he's a younger and supposedly fresher man, by the mid-rounds, he'll be feeling the pace from needing to carry Maruti's weight throughout the fight. So, yeah, look, it's always tough at this level, especially when you've got a hungry, young, undefeated fighter. And I expect Mthalane-Edwards to lift to another level tonight. I just don't think it's going to be enough.
One of the shots was that Father Time Waits for No Man. Mthalane-Edwards obviously did an interview, very respectful interview, but obviously, you know, a quote taken out of the interview. Do you think that's the case with Mauricio Mthalane?
Look, how many 38-year-old flyweights do you see? 20-plus year careers. Most professional fighters, period, they turn pro, they hit their peak, and they're done between, say, 6 to 10 years, generally. So the kind of career he's had, it is a real throwback kind of career. But until he slows down, he hasn't. So, yeah, might wait for No Man, but in recent fights, you know, with Kuroda, with Yagashi, he had very inspired challenges in those fights, and he was able to turn it up by the middle rounds. He looked like the younger, fresher guy in those outings. So, yeah, I mean, it's true, but until it shows, then it hasn't showed. So, you know, from our perspective, we're hopeful that at least for a few more fights, Maruti can keep turning back the clock and earning the respect that he's deserved for many years.
You mentioned a 20-year career. It's going to probably go into 21 if next year if everything goes really well. When did he first hit your radar?
Oh, I remember he was covered as a prospect in South African boxing in around mid-2001, thereabouts, as an emerging prospect. So there used to be just a little list published in the Fist magazine. And I remember seeing him and thinking, oh yeah, interesting. And I was in high school. So, then in 2008, he beat my good friend Hussein in a world title eliminator. And then to come back 10 years following that moment and to be co-representing him, what an absolute honor. What an unbelievable career that the kid has had. And to see him still fresh, to see him still hungry after all these years, to me, he's got to go down as one of Africa's greatest fighters of all time.
And as things currently stand, where do you think he fits into that picture?
Look, I think that they're the things that post-career you sit back and look at and you stack it up and you look at legacy. But one thing that I think sharply works in Maruti's favour, Zolani Tete, Jean-Real Casimiro, Julio Cesar Miranda, they all became future world champions after he beat him. Nonito Donaire, he fought him at the height of Nonito's powers, coming into his absolute prime. Nonito's still, in a month fighting Ubali for the world title. So Nonito's still present there too. When you look at the guys he's fought and the guys that he's beaten, to have beaten 3 future world champions, and then even in his IBO title run, you look at, there's 3 fighters he beat in his run with the IBO title that went completely under the radar. Those kids are still ranked. Guys like Genesis LeBruns are still highly ranked in the flyweight division. So I think all of those things tick the boxes to really contribute to his legacy. But I feel in terms of where he's going to stack up, it might be, look, I'm not going to give you any figure. It might be broadly top 15 of all time, right? But where he's going to fall and where it's going to stack up, a lot of that can be written in the next 12 to 18 months. So that's why hopefully if we get through this fight, which we should, I know we've got a mandatory obligation with Jason Mama from the Philippines, but, if we could possibly keep that on hold and look at a unification bout, with someone like Martinez, they're the fights that really set your legacy. Those fights are the ones that move the needle historically. So, yeah, let's just see where everything stacks up. And then once he hangs them up, sooner or later, we'll have that conversation about where he fits historically.
Well, Maruti Mthalane had to go through Tunisia. They had a long journey to get you. He's ready to fight now. What about your journey? I mean, you're coming all the way from Australia, also on the other end of the earth.
It was pretty straightforward. I went Melbourne to Singapore. There was 18 people on my flight, so I had about 12 rows to myself.
You enjoyed that?
Oh, it was beautiful. Yeah, I could stretch out. And then had a 4 hours layover, and then Singapore to London. I adjusted the first day with my sleep and everything. It's just time zones. Time zones are the hardest things to adjust to, but comparative to usual where I'm doing 50, 60 international flights a year to, not having flown anywhere internationally the last year, I'm just excited to be back amongst it. So maybe a little bit of that excitement, seeing the team, seeing Maruti, seeing Colin. I hadn't seen them since the fence against Yagashi in Japan, which was December 23rd, 2019. So it's just exciting to be back amongst everybody and catch up with some very dear friends.
So, on the go, you're back on the road, Maruti Mthalane, get the win hopefully. Who else do you represent at the moment?
Well, we've got Tasha Jonas fighting Katie Taylor for all the bouts tomorrow night at lightweight. So that's an exciting challenge. Hopefully she can get over the line there. We're under no illusion. We know it's a very tough outing, but hopefully she can get over the line there. Got some really exciting kids back in Australia. So there's a kid, Matteo Tapia, at super middleweight that I like everyone to keep on their radar. I think he's very, very exciting talent. We had Paul Fleming back in the ring recently. There's Billy Dibb, former IBF world champion, who I'm still looking after. We're ready for one last run at maybe a title or a big legacy fight. And then we've got some really decent emerging prospects as well. So it's an exciting time. I think that, over the next 1 or 2 years, you're going to see a lot of kids that either I'm representing or co-representing with MTK that are going to really start making statements internationally. We just had a kid in Japan, one to keep on the radar, Ryosuke Nishida. He's 4-0. He just beat Daigo Higo, who's 18 wins, 1 loss, former world champion. To beat him in his 5th fight and to dominate him, give him a boxing lesson. I know Nishida's going to go top 5 in the world with the WBO, but he's one definitely for everybody to keep on the radar too. I think that give him a couple fights, he can beat the likes of John Real Casimero.
Wow, so that's exciting talent coming through. To the immediate though, Natasha Jonas, I mean,
yeah,
what a fight, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they fought in the amateurs. This is a huge rematch of the GB versus Ireland fight at the 2012 Olympics, which of course Katie Taylor won. It was a good competitive fight, but she won it very clear. Like I said, we're under no illusions. We know that Tasha's a huge underdog, but she's very well prepared, very sharp, in the best shape of her career. Hopefully we're catching Taylor slightly on the decline. But even if we aren't, I think that Tasha's got the power, the timing, the skills to really offset her. But she's got to go out there and do it for 10 rounds. That's the tricky part in this fight. You know, I can see Tasha dominating moments, but she needs to put rounds together. So, yeah, God willing, it rolls our way tomorrow as well. We need a clean sweep this weekend. Two from 2 world title fights. It would make the trip completely worthwhile.
I'm assuming you're not going to be able to be present at Natasha's fight.
Yeah, well, no, because I'd need to be able to enter the bubble there. So there's just not the turnaround time to be able to undertake all the relevant COVID testing and so forth and travel from London to Manchester into the bubble. So I'll be watching on my phone and be screaming and hoping that some way, cosmically through the universe, I'll be hearing my instructions. Not that it would count for much, but yeah, just there for support and encouragement more than anything else.
So what for the next couple of months coming up? What's the on the immediate radar for you?
Well, I mean, Olympics in a few months. So I've been scouting for a long time anyways, you know, in terms of the class of 2020, 2021. But just start looking at who's coming out of the qualifiers, who hasn't, who's going to be like the key accounts to represent, to look to sign. I got a very talented kid in Australia that I've just taken under my umbrella, Jason Malia. So he was on the international team. Lost to the world number 1 at the Olympic qualifiers, was hopeful of getting possibly through the world qualifiers. Because of all the travel and everything, AIBA just went in the in Australia and Asia. In Australasia, they went back to their seeding system. He missed the cut for the seeding, so now he's turning over professionals. So it's kind of misfortune on that side, but on my end, you know, fortunately he turns pro a little bit earlier, and we'll just see how he develops. And then we've got some, you know, really good, talented kids coming through in Africa that I've been talking to Colin about looking to headhunt and sign over the next few months. So, you know, I'm not going to speak too much about it, but just watch this space. I think that, you know, especially now being back, traveling, seeing things slowly open up again in the sport, that anticipation and that excitement to do great things comes back. It returns. You feel motivated and stimulated.
How difficult was 2020 for you?
Oh, it was rough. It was just like, first 3 months I traveled non-stop. And then I was basically planning to have about 5-6 weeks rest anyway. So just stay across all of my obligations, but no travel, just stay at home, catch a breather. And then it was coming out of that second stage. So in Australia, we had what was determined to be the harshest lockdown in the world. Hence why we've got next to 0 COVID cases right now back home. But it was at the expense of industries, at the expense of being able to travel and, you know, even say coming over here, all the requirements necessary to secure my exemption were out of this world. You know, it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of documents, a lot of discussions with government officials. Then finally they relented and granted it. So 2020 was very tough because the thing is in my head as well, mentally, whenever I feel like I've hit a wall, I travel, I fly. It's just like, if there's money in the bank account or whatever, I'll fly. You know, if I feel like I'm stagnant, I'll travel, whether it's through to Africa, to United States, to UK, wherever it may be, just to get amongst the sport and feel like I'm getting my touch back, get reinvigorated scouting wise, and then move forward from there. And when you have that capacity to freely travel taken away from you, where it's like, you know, I'm a spontaneous person, so it's like, all right, my spontaneity needs to be on basically a 3-week dial-up in order to get all the necessary paperwork, book flights, be able to travel. Then you're looking at different COVID restrictions around the world. So it was very, very challenging. I think that most of my peers in the sport would say the same thing, that it really asks questions of them. You know, it tests your passion. It tests how hungry you are to stay in this industry because of the instability coming out of it. But you know what? It just makes you appreciate the good moments more. So it makes me savor moments like this being in London a lot more too. So I guess that's a silver lining.
Yeah, you are traveling again. Do you have a particular area, region of the world that you like to scout mostly in particular?
Africa is always close to my heart, just because I think that there's so many untapped talents. People don't understand, like I said all the time with Ghana, people don't understand how primitive the training conditions are, and yet these kids are excelling. Or sometimes that, you know, there's not different layers to the coaching. The coaching might be primitive, or there's no rings. Kids are sparring out in the street, and yet they're still excelling. There's no funding in the amateur programs like there is in westernized countries, and yet they're still excelling. So, like, sometimes I see a kid, say there's a kid from Uganda, and he loses 10-4 to a Kazakh in the amateurs, and the Ugandan kid's 20 and the Kazakh's 23, had 280 amateur fights. The Ugandan kid's had 25. I want to invest in the Ugandan kid. I know that kid, with the right investment, the right upside, the right kind of upskilling, putting him with the right team, he's probably got a higher level, a higher ceiling in the pros. Most people think you're crazy for saying that, you know. You see it yourself in South Africa. I always say, in Australia, we've got kids that are 20-0. There's a kid in South Africa who's like 10 wins, 4 losses, and 3 draws that come out and give him a whooping. You know, because it's a different kind of system. It brings a different kind of hunger. You look at guys even say within Colin's stable, Lorado Lamini, you know, lost on debut. How many times in this era where everyone's worried about protecting the O, he lost, he's 2-1, he's 3-1, and people just write him off. That kid's a real deal. That kid's a real world-class fighter, you know. And so I feel like, in terms like if you're investing your time, investing financially, Africa's always untapped, you know. And because it's been such a joy, and I've been privileged to work with so many elite fighters out of the region, it's always close to my heart, you know. I think the other culture I always gravitate to is Japan, because it's such a boxing culture, and you know that the kids always prepared. They're always disciplined. They prepare like samurais. They come to throw down. You know, they do all the little things right. So I think that's another market. Mexico's another one too. It's tough because I know that there's so much volume coming out of Mexico, and you need to really be able to sit on the accounts to develop the fighters. You need to really be on them day to day, but I think that Mexico is largely untapped as well.
So when it comes to scouting a guy in Africa, and you know, let's just say in Uganda, let's use that as an example, you pick him up. How hard is it to take him out of Uganda, place him somewhere else, and, you know, obviously give him financial backing in the beginning? Is that a difficult investment?
Well, what's tough is that you just said it there. You're taking kids out of what's routine, but a lot of times that's necessary to excel. So, you know, because we mentioned Uganda, you look at Ayub Kalule, who's probably the greatest Ugandan, alongside John Mugabe. Both of them weren't based in Uganda for their professional careers. I believe Kalule was in Denmark, and Mugabe was in the UK, and then in the USA. You go back to like the former IBO champion who was in Australia, Jackson Asiku, who was on the Uganda national team. He went to the Olympic Games at 48 kilograms, and then within 12 months of turning pro, he was up at featherweight. He was up at 57 kilos. And that's just from having been malnourished for all those years. You know what I'm saying? Like, not being on the right dietary plans, not having the right kind of technical training, things like that. Taking a lot of those kids out of that system, it's very tough. It's very tricky, because that's everything to them. It's what's true to their culture. You know what I'm saying? So you put a guy like that and you put him in the UK and Australia, whatever, it's a huge culture shock. But it's oftentimes what's necessary. You know, like one of the things I talk to Colin about in Africa is, you know, say we have an elite talent coming out of whether it's Zambia, Ghana, wherever it may be, because the region throws out so many different talented kids that just accomplish against the grain. If we can keep them within Africa, at least they're closer to home. You know, and I know that we have the facilities there with in Johannesburg. So if we were to place, say, a kid from Uganda or that there in South Africa, obviously it's not the same to being at home, but at least there's a bit more of an understanding culturally. Whereas a kid like that, if you just throw him in Las Vegas, it's, they're shell-shocked. They've had fighters I work with over the years that you think, all right, if I take this kid and he's a diamond in the rough and I put him with, let's say, Freddie Roach or whoever it may be, they're going to be able to excel. But you still need to be able to assist them with making that adjustment. I had it with an African kid I signed out of the 2008 Olympics, Basti Samir, from Ghana. So he's gone from being raised Ghanaian culture, fighting there, to being in Vegas, all the distractions, bright lights, out of the Mayweather gym. It was the worst thing for him. So it's not just about placing them, in a different country. It's about placing them in the right system where they can be educated, where you can give them the support, where you can build a sense of community. If there's a local community, they can tap into it. And then understanding that the kids are going to get homesick. You've got to balance that up. You've got to know that, you might do 2 fights, send them back home a couple months, and just kind of keep them tied to their culture too. So I think that, though, it's necessary because you just don't have the infrastructure. You don't have the sparring in place in most of these places. That's one of the benefits you got in South Africa, especially in the lighter weights, is the sparring. Whereas a lot of other African nations, say a kid in Zambia, if he's world number 5, the next guy available in Zambia to spar as a professional might be, world number 600. So you don't have the elite work that's going to develop his skills and get him accustomed to simulate, the elite standards he's going to have to adapt to.
And what about when it comes to the ring? I mean, when you put a guy like that in the ring who's obviously had those conditions and, he's let's just say he's comfortable in his conditions in Africa, like a Mthalane, for example. I mean, he's always trained in South Africa, for example. He's never had to move. And he gets in the ring against someone like Mthalane-Edwards, who's completely different. And now they're in England, they're in Sonny's environment. I mean, a guy for like Maruti, do you even think the environment changes anything? It's just the ring?
Someone like Maruti, no. As long as the ring is square and the rounds are 3 minutes, then it's everything he is accustomed to and everything he knows. But in terms of the preparation, that's where having the necessary sparring partners, guys that are going to move, guys that are going to force him to have to use his feet, to have to think through the sessions, that's where that's crucial. Because it is a different style, say, comparative to the last 4 or 5 opponents. But it's nothing that he hasn't encountered in his career. So it's just getting the right work in the gym, having trainers that understand that you have to adapt to different styles. You have to have different preparations. You can't prepare the same way for every opponent and expect different results. To produce winning results, you have to adapt every camp.
All right, Michael, I'm going to leave this lastly with you. Tonight, what's your actual definite prediction?
Maruti Mthalane coming out with the victory. Don't matter if it's KO, stoppage, points, whatever it is. I just see him coming out victorious.